website. So good afternoon, good morning, good evening to everyone. This is the first webinar on the new PhD program in environmental studies that is being offered by NYU. And so we will, in this webinar, we will introduce obviously NYU and the Department of Environmental Studies, but more importantly, this new PhD program and kind of the structure of it, from everything from its curriculum to some of the nuts and bolts behind it. And mentorship will also give an overview to the admissions process, funding, and important dates. And obviously, if there are, I will talk, hopefully not for too long, about, I would say maybe 15, 20 minutes to try and give you some of those overviews. And then we'd really love to hear from you all with any questions you have. There is a Q&A option. I should say I completely forgot to introduce Margot Alfar, who's a researcher in our department and is a key part of helping with the administration of as we launch this PhD program. So we will be after the short presentation. There is the Q&A box in the Zoom that you should be able to see below. Please type any questions that you have there, and this is the time to get those addressed. And obviously, if you have more specific questions, we also have a specific email alias that you can also email, which will be on the last slide, which we'll keep up. And I'll give all that information as we go through. So without further ado, let me share my screen again. So hopefully you should be able to see that. Margot, you can see that, right? Okay, perfect. Great. So in terms of what we'll cover today, so obviously briefly introduce NYU and the Department of Environmental Studies within it. And also the vision that we have as a department, as well as a PhD program for environmental studies, because I think that is one thing that sets us apart as a program in terms of the way we think about studying the environment, researching the environment, and the role that environmental experts that will come out of this program could and should play in society. We'll get into a bit of the nuts and bolts of the structure of the PhD, which we've given obviously a lot of thought to as we're creating this new PhD program. And a lot of us have come through interdisciplinary programs or disciplinary programs and have a lot of ideas of what we wanted to kind of a PhD program in environmental studies for the 21st century to look like. So we'll get into the curriculum, this idea of specializations, of mentorship. Funding is obviously important. And then the admissions process and important dates. So first on NYU. NYU is actually the largest private university in the United States. It has a pretty large student body, and it's split pretty much evenly between an undergraduate and graduate population, about 30,000 students that are both undergrads and grads for a total of 60,000. It's obviously located in the heart of New York. This picture here is of Washington Square, which is in the heart of Greenwich Village in Lower Manhattan. And this is very much not a campus university. NYU is integrated within New York City. There are, I would say, over 100 buildings in Greenwich Village. And then we also have them dotted around in Brooklyn, where the School of Engineering is, in Midtown, where the Institute of Fine Art. So we are really embedded in New York City. And this is, in addition to the program itself, which I'll talk about, one of the advantages of NYU and this program is to be able to really take advantage of being in the heart of New York City, right? Because New York in many ways is at the heart of many of the decisions around environment, whether it be international decisions, obviously with the UN, big philanthropic foundations, big financial foundations, big NGOs, big research institutions, the arts. I mean, this is really the center of the universe for many of these decisions that are important to the environment. There's Climate Week. We just, and you know, a lot of, and we'll talk about this more, but a lot of what makes a person's career is luck and opportunity, and there is no place better for creating luck and opportunity than New York City. In terms of the vision of environmental studies that we have as a department and that we have for this program, at the core of this department, oh, and I should say I didn't introduce our department. The Department of Environmental Studies is a quite new department within NYU. So NYU has been around for almost 200 years, since 1831. But this department has only been around for about 10, right? It was a program and then it became a department. And so we are one of the newest departments in the School of Arts and Sciences at NYU, which is the largest and oldest school within NYU. And we were founded by a philosopher and a biologist, and that quite unique combination of founders is reflected also in our faculty, where we span from sociologists and anthropologists to climate scientists and ecologists, and people that do truly transdisciplinary work, cutting across the social sciences, the humanities, and the natural scientists, and also with a view towards trying to influence policy, having a role in media, informing NGO campaigns. We are very much an outward-looking department, as well as producing, high-end cross-cutting scholarship. And so in terms of the vision that we have, right, at the core of the Department of Environmental Studies, as well as this new PhD program, is this conviction that understanding and addressing the environmental problems we face requires transdisciplinary systems and problem-oriented research. So just to be clear what that means, because often you get a lot of these buzzwords that are kind of vague and empty, but we really mean these, right? Transdisciplinary, and we use this instead of interdisciplinary, with transdisciplinary really meaning cutting across not just disciplines within a particular, say, the natural sciences or the social sciences, but we really mean cutting across the natural sciences, the social sciences, and the humanities, right? So we do research here, and we would expect PhDs to do research that combines methods, say, from ecology and political science, right? Or sociology and climate science, right? So this is the kind of work we do. We also view the problems that we face as part of these larger systems, right? And this is reflected in the research themes that we've identified for our department and for this PhD program. And also that they are problem-oriented, meaning that we as a department and also for this PhD program are not thinking through the lens of disciplinary training, right? That you train as an economist or as a chemist, but that the way that you develop your specialization, the way that you go through this PhD is through focusing on a specific problem and thinking about what are the best tools, either the best methodologies or the best perspectives of trying to address that problem, right? And so what that means for the kind of students that we want to produce in this PhD program is that we envision that, our students, our graduates, will be part of the next generation of environmental experts. And when I say environmental experts, that is really, again, not restricted to academia at all, but all to include government, civil society, the private sector, the arts, who take a transdisciplinary approach to environmental action and research, who've developed a multi-method toolkit that can facilitate complex problem solving and an ability to communicate to diverse audiences. That's also something that's really important to us in this program, that when you come out of this program, you are not just trained to talk to other PhDs, but that you can communicate with diverse audiences, from the general public to policymakers to funders, etc. So let me get into the nuts and bolts of the PhD here. So kind of at the highest level, we have 3 research themes that we've identified, right? And a lot of this information is on our website. You can just find it by Googling NYU Environmental Studies, and there's a link to the PhD program there. But our faculty research interests fall under 3 broad research themes, and they reflect both current faculty scholarship, but also areas that we hope to continue to strengthen in the future, right? And so the 3 that we have here are food and land use systems, ecological systems, and governance systems. So obviously you can see the systems language is there throughout, because for example, food and land use is not just about growing the food on the field. It's also about what are the power dynamics or the institutions and actors that influence how that food is grown, what food is grown, who's growing it, what are the rights of the people that both grow the food and receive that food? How is it transported? How is it consumed? What are the foods that are demanded? All of these are part of a system of actors and forces and institutions that are important to take into account when we study these problems, when we try to develop actions to try and make them more sustainable. And that's also the case across ecological systems, which span from natural ecosystems all the way to urban ecosystems. And then obviously governance systems, right? Thinking about how do we actually manage in what many believe is now the Anthropocene, right? Where this geological era, where the dominant force on this planet is us, the human race, right? What our responsibility is to ameliorate the problems that we've created, and in a way that is equitable, that is effective, that is adaptive to new science as things change. So these are obviously quite broad, but they also do cover faculty, a range of faculty research. And I haven't highlighted specific faculty member research here, but all of that is well documented on our website if you're interested, and I'm happy to take questions. Just to be clear, because I know different programs, PhD programs, have different ways of, talking about their specialities, right? These research themes are not formal tracks with specific requirements, meaning you do not apply and then get into the food and land use systems track, and then there are specific courses that you need to take associated with it. These are broad themes, and they are kind of, for want of a better word, and it's a bit of a fancy way of putting it, so I apologize, but intellectual umbrellas under which students are encouraged but not required to develop their specialization. And it's a way both for us to advertise to the wider world, to you, our applicants, and people interested in this program, what we do, what we're interested in doing, and also a way to, make clear perhaps what we do and how it's different from other programs that you might be interested as well. So that's the research themes. A key part of the PhD program is also developing your own specialization, right? So there will be a core curriculum that I'll talk about in the next slide, but each student will develop their own unique specialization, a unique set of competencies and expertise organized around a specific problem or issue area that you're interested in. And that process will start in year one. And you may come already with a clear idea of what it is you want to focus on, but this will be an iterative process in the sense that you will have opportunities to talk through what your specialization is or could be. You can refine it, you can completely revise it, right? You will not be fixed and expected when you come in, this is what I want to do, this is how I'm going to do it. The whole point is that as you are exposed to new faculty, new courses, and your peers, right, other students, both within our program and elsewhere, your idea of what you're interested in may change, and that's totally encouraged, and that's totally fine, right? In some ways, it would be a bit strange if after all these different interactions you've had, you didn't somehow amend in small or big ways what you're interested in, right? So your specialization can either fall under one of the department research themes that I identified in the previous slide, or it may be developed with your advising team. It might be slightly outside one of the research themes. If you can find a faculty member that's willing to advise you, or in a group that's willing to advise you, that's great. And obviously, there will be combinations, there will be specializations that fall under one, two, or all three of the research themes that we've identified. So again, this is more just a way of hopefully guiding you and guiding you also towards faculty that are interested in one or more of those research themes. Just to give you an example, again, this is just examples. Do not take this. This is not me saying, here are the only specializations you can do, or here are our preferred specializations. This is literally just me listing some examples of specializations that you could get into, right? Whether it be animal behavior and welfare, because we do have a world-leading animal studies program, including an MA, where there are courses here that you can take, and everything from animal cognition to animal ethics and animals in agriculture, tropical land systems, infectious disease in the environment, urban ecology, environmental justice, right? These are all specializations that at least some of our faculty do research in and have expertise in. But I could have listed another 50 specializations that would reflect that, right? And the idea is that as you develop this specialization, which should be formalized around the end of your second year, this becomes the focus then of your qualifying exams, right, at the end of your second year, and then the basis of your prospectus and ultimately your dissertation. In terms of the PhD structure and in terms of the curriculum, I should say, there are going to be, depending on how you look at it, obviously there are 4 bullet points here, but 3 of those are actually 2-semester courses. So these are either like 4 courses or 7 courses if you count the 2 semesters as an individual course. But you have a Foundations in Environmental Studies course, which will be a 2-semester sequence where we essentially cover both the history and philosophy of environmental studies, and then go deep into different environmental problems and cover those problems from, again, the full spectrum of environmental studies. So looking at it from a natural science perspective, social science, and humanities perspective. So, for example, looking at climate change, we will look at the latest science in terms of the modeling and evaluation of impacts of climate. We'll also be looking at, economic and sociological analyses of how people are adapting to climate change and how, for example, migration flows may be affected by climate. And then how, in the humanities sense, everything from the ethics of climate change to looking into the history of how civilizations have dealt with previous climate change in the past. So the idea is to have a really holistic view, an environmental studies view of each of these problems, right? We'll have an interdisciplinary environmental research design course. This is going to be very important, again, to expose you to all the different tools that can be used to study environmental problems. We'll have research and writing seminars that will kind of guide you and help you in thinking about how to do literature reviews, how to write a prospectus, and also how to communicate to diverse audiences. And then we'll have research colloquium that'll be based around the departmental research seminar, where you'll be able to meet and engage with a variety of researchers at NYU in our department, but broadly within NYU and in the New York area and outside that come to our department to give research seminars. In addition to these core courses, you'll have required electives. So there'll be 12 credits for your specialization. That's roughly 3 courses. Most courses are 4-credit courses, but sometimes they're 3. So there's a bit of difference there. But you'll essentially be taking 3 or 4 courses specific to your specialization. You'll be taking at least 1 methods course, but you are not limited to just 1, but at least 1 methods course. And we also have a breadth requirement where essentially you take a course that is significantly outside your chosen area of specialization. Because again, if you're an environmental studies PhD student, or just environmental studies in general, there is such a breadth here of topics, of issue areas, and we want our students to be at least cognizant and in some ways well-versed with a variety of topics, even as you develop your specialization. I do want to make the point here that students can actually take classes across NYU, not just across arts and sciences, but we have gotten agreements from every schools like the School of Law, School of Business, School of Engineering, the School of Global Public Health. You can take courses across all of those schools. And not only that, but actually NYU is part of something called the Inter-University Doctoral Consortium, which is actually a group of 9 universities in the New York area. But it includes universities in New York like Fordham and CUNY and Columbia, but it also includes some universities in New Jersey, like Rutgers and Princeton. And essentially, what this means is that because we are part of this Inter-University Doctoral Consortium, you, as a student, if you find a course at, let's say, Rutgers, that is especially interesting to you and helpful for your specialization or building out your methods expertise that you want to take at Rutgers, you can do that and get credit for that as towards your PhD at NYU, right? You just need to get permission from the professor at that university. But it's kind of a force multiplier. It allows you to have access to more courses because we can't possibly anticipate all the different specializations and interests that our students are going to have. And so this is a great way for you to have access to essentially 10 times the amount of potential courses than you would have if you were only restricted to NYU. In terms of mentorship, and this is something I know several of you have reached out about this. Students you are going to be admitted as a cohort rather than to work with specific faculty members. So you are not admitted based on, an individual relationship that you've built with a faculty member. What we want to do as a program is admit a balanced cohort, which means across the research themes, across disciplinary backgrounds, across geographic and diversity backgrounds. And so that is our priority. And so what that means is that you won't, when you're admitted, have a specific advisor that you're scheduled to work with. And so in the build-up to you arriving in fall of next year, we will ask you for your preferences, your top 3 of who you'd like a primary advisor to be, and you will be matched with an advisor at least for the first couple of years here at NYU. But then in that first semester that you're here, you will also identify 2 other faculty members to form your guidance committee, at least for years 1 and 2. Now, this is going to be a flexible program in the sense that if you feel it isn't working with your primary advisor, your guidance committee, you come to me as the director of the PhD program, and we figure out a way to amend that. And also, if after years 1 and 2 you feel this was great, but I also want to either add new people or completely change, we can also talk through that, right? So you can decide to stick with or change this committee as you move after you've completed your coursework and moving into the qualifying exams, writing your prospectus and your dissertation. And you can also, for your dissertation committee, include 2 faculty members that are completely outside of NYU. Okay, and all these details and more will be included in the doctoral handbook, which will be essentially an all-you-can-eat, a one-stop guide to the PhD program. Okay, so we'll have everything from all the requirements that I've talked about here to funding to kind of an advising template. So you'll have all that information. Okay. Funding and accommodation, right? These are obviously important issues that I know you want clarity on. The first thing is to say, every student in this program will be fully funded, either by NYU or by faculty-raised external funds, right? For 5 years. And that funding includes both a base stipend that you will have, and it also includes tuition and health benefits, okay? In addition to the base stipend, which for next year, and I have a brief breakdown of it in the next slide, but the base stipend for this academic year, 24-25, is $35,000. That goes up gradually every year, determined by the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences at NYU. But in addition to that base stipend, you will be able to work as research assistants, as teaching assistants, as language instructors, if that's relevant to you. There are also various fellowships you can apply to supplement your income, right? So there's the base stipend that you would be guaranteed, but then you could add on to that stipend through these other positions that can be pretty significant additions to your base stipend. First-year students are offered housing, but on a first-come, first-served basis. So you're not guaranteed housing, but there is some housing available both in Stuytown, which is in the East Village of New York, and then there is some in housing that is closer to campus. The NYU Graduate School also has this lease guarantee program, which is to facilitate off-campus living. And that's because it's sometimes difficult to get a lease in New York, and NYU understands that and tries to help through this lease guarantee program. In terms of, this is the breakdown, this is just a screenshot of the NYU Graduate School website in terms of what is in this, what we call the McCracken package. Essentially, these the fellowship that is awarded by the graduate school is called a McCracken line or a McCracken fellowship. And you see at the bottom here, you have the minimum base stipend, which is the $35,000. Then it's also covering your tuition, your fee scholarship, and your health insurance. So the total package is this amount, but the amount that you would be seeing in your bank account over a year in terms of this base stipend would be $35,000. In terms of the admissions process, There are application requirements, right? So this is all listed on our website and on the graduate school application website. And so there's a statement of academic purpose, the personal history and diversity statement. I won't go through the details of this. If you have questions, I can answer them. But essentially, those are described in detail. That what we're looking for is described on our website. A writing sample, CV, 3 letters of recommendation, academic transcript, TOEFL scores if English is not your mother tongue, but we are not accepting and will not review GRE scores. Some departments do, we do not, due to a variety of reasons, but essentially that there are several studies showing that GRE scores are essentially not a equitable way of best evaluating the most capable students. Application deadline, December 15. And then in terms of timeline, and this will be clear on the next slide too, but a subset. So essentially you will submit your application by the 15th of December. We will do an initial review of all the applications we get. And then a subset of applicants will be invited to interview on Zoom in sometime in February of next year. And then a subset of those that we interview will be sent offer letters in early to mid-March. And then you will need to make your decision by early April, right? And this will become clearer again. We'll be in touch for those of you who get to this stage. But essentially, if you want to come here, then we would encourage you to accept as soon as possible. And those of you that are deciding, obviously, between perhaps 1 or 2 programs, to try and make those decisions as quickly as you can, because we will also have a wait list, and we will want to try and move to that wait list to ensure that students who want to come can come as quickly as possible. And so the quicker that you can make a decision, the better it is for you, the better it is for us. So just to put this in a more a kind of a nicer graphic, and I have to thank Margot for making this look much nicer than anything I could ever put together. So applications are open now, and there are links to the graduate school application portal from our website. You should be able to find quite easily just through a Google search. There will be another webinar on November 21st from 7 to 8 p.m. If you're at this webinar, you almost certainly do not need to attend that webinar unless you have specific questions that you want to ask. But again, that will be, you can also just ask them via email. The application deadline, December 15th, Zoom interviews in February, offer letters in March, your decision in early April. And then obviously we are going to welcome our first cohort in fall of 2025. And with that, I know I went a bit over, but thank you very much. And now would be a great time to take any of your questions. And so I believe Margot's keeping an eye on the Q&A. And so you'll help us kind of organize these things.
So we have 6 questions right now. Do you want me to read them, or do you want to read them out loud?
Feel free to read them. And if there are some that are quite similar, we can group them together.
So could we easily find the other universities participating in the inter-uni doctoral consortiums? So
yes, if you Google inter-university, I might even have the here. You know what? I'm gonna. I don't know if everyone has access to the chat. I don't know if they do.
Should have access to the chat.
You can see the host and panelists. I'm going to say everyone here. So hopefully you should have this. I've just posted a link to the Inter-University Doctoral Consortium, and about just a couple under there, you can see there are, I believe, 9 schools. So it's Columbia, Princeton, the CUNY Graduate Center, Rutgers, Fordham, Stony Brook University, the New School, the Teachers College at Columbia, and NYU. So, it's a pretty, I would be surprised if across those universities, you can't find a course that is dedicated to what you want to do. And obviously, if there's something so unique that is so specific to your specialization, we can also you can also essentially develop a reading course or something with a faculty member in the department where you say, you know what, I want to get credit for really digging into my specialization. There's not really a course that helps me do this, but I'm going to, in collaboration with a faculty member, build up a reading list and essentially kind of a set of assignments over the course of a semester and meetings with a faculty member to discuss these readings that is unique to me. You can also do something like that, right? You know, hopefully through this and through that flexibility, through the consortium and through this kind of flexible course development, you'll be able to kind of come up with a collection of courses that is helps you develop a specialization.
We have a second question, which is, I currently work full-time for the EPA. Is there flexibility in taking courses alongside employment, or would that be advised against?
For now, it is only a full-time program. It's, you know, I know there are some programs at NYU, like in the business school, where you can do a part-time MBA and they have evening and weekend classes. That is currently not the case now, and we are going to be quite a small program. Our first cohort will probably be about 5 students, and it's going to be really important for us that those 5, that cohort really, you know, is cohesive and you know works together, and so for right now it will be a full-time program, and unfortunately that means that it won't be available as kind of a part-time thing, at least in the foreseeable future.
So the third question was, are part-time students guaranteed full funding? So there's no part-time students.
There's going to be no, unfortunately, as a part-time program, at least right now in its current formulation, is not possible.
So another question is, given that admitted students will be matched with advisors, is there any value in reaching out to professors whose research we're interested in?
Sure. Yeah, you are. So the distinction here is that we encourage you, if there are faculty, we encourage you to first look through the faculty on our website, and that if you want to reach out to faculty members, you can, and it'll essentially be up to individual faculty members whether they have the time and the means to be able to speak with you. But at the same time, it is not a prerequisite for the program that you need to have established a relationship with a faculty member. There are some programs like that where essentially you need to be sponsored by a faculty member as part of, you know, the process of being admitted. That is not the case here because we want to admit students as a cohort, right? We want to have balance across the research themes. We want to have balance across disciplinary backgrounds, balance across life experiences, right? And so that is inconsistent with kind of, you know, admitting people based on the relationships they've built with individual faculty. But if you want to reach out to faculty, learn more about their research and how your research interests may fit in, feel free to reach out to individual faculty members. Hopefully that's clear, that distinction.
And there are a few questions about how many people get admitted and how are they selected?
So the process will be, just to recap on the process, you know, this will be the first year of the program. So we don't know how many applications we're going to receive come mid-December. But essentially a subset of those applications will be interviewed. So there will be a Zoom interview, likely with the PhD admissions committee. There is a committee within our department that is devoted to evaluating applications and interviewing students. And we haven't, that interview process isn't fully finalized yet in terms of whether it'll be the entire committee or a subset of them, but there will be a common set of questions in those interviews. And so based on then your written application and those interviews, a subset of those interviews will be made offers, right? And we also need to decide, because we haven't yet made a hard decision as to how many offers will be sent out. We want to have 5 students start next fall, but we don't know how that right now, how that's going to correspond to how many offers we send out, but it will be more than 5. We just don't know how many more. And in terms of what we are, in terms of, you know, as I mentioned, what we will be looking for is both. So for individual students, what we are looking for is ultimately a commitment to interdisciplinarity, transdisciplinarity, right? And that does not mean that there needs to be evidence of it in your past work. We understand people may be applying to our program that have come through a specific disciplinary bachelor's or master's, right? Maybe you have a bachelor's in biology or in anthropology, and you haven't taken coursework that is interdisciplinary. But we want to see evidence either in your personal statement, your personal history, your academic statement, your personal history, your writing sample, of your commitment to the importance of transdisciplinary research. We want to see some amount of environmental engagement, whether that be through research or policy or activism or some form of just, this is a topic that I find both interesting and that is important to me, right? Environmental studies as a field. And then finally, obviously, some measure that you are going to be able to perform academically in a PhD program, right? And that will be through some combination of things, whether it be your transcripts, your writing sample, and obviously the content of your academic statement and your personal history statement, but evidence that you are going to be a strong academic performer, right? So the three things: a commitment to transdisciplinarity, some evidence of environmental engagement, and strong academic performance, and however that may be reflected. And then on top of that, those are the individual things. We are going to be deciding as an admissions committee and as a department, trying to have balance across, as I said, the research theme, disciplinary backgrounds, so that we don't just have 5 people that are all done bachelors in anthropology or all done bachelors in or have background in philosophy. We're going to want to have a diversity of trainings and experiences and geographies that are represented in this program. So hopefully that gives a bit more clarity. But I'm sorry and happy to provide more information, if there wasn't everything you needed there.
We have over 46. We have 46 questions right now.
Wow. Okay. Well, I think we'll be able to have records of this as well. So
yes.
and again, if you have a particularly pressing question, in that last slide, there was the email alias, and I'm sure many of you know it already, but it's phd.environmental.studies@nyu.edu. So phd.environmental.studies@nyu.edu. So if there are any questions that we do not address in the next 15 minutes or so, feel free to email there or come to the next webinar and we'll try to address it there.
Yes, there's a lot of questions about the writing samples and the cover letters, which I think are probably covered on the website. David, that's what you were saying.
Yes.
Maybe we can talk about the funding. There's a few questions about funding.
Sure.
So will there be dedicated funding for research, or will we need to secure additional funding for travel, fieldwork, etc.? And is the funding affordable given New York's cost of living? And yeah, let's start with that first, I guess.
So there will be, so you can find, I think, so on the graduate student website, there is, here, and I'm going to put the link again in the chat to this. So there is information on graduate school fellowships and assistantships. There's also there's a PhD financial calculator, which I think is quite helpful just in terms of trying to understand the additional sources of income that you can, because as I said, you can be a language instructor, you can be an hourly appointment, but just to give you an idea, if you take, for example, an hourly research assistantship for 10 hours a week for 15 weeks in a semester, you can make an additional over $4,000, right? Or if you are a course assistant for a semester, again, for 10 hours a week, another $4,000, but they may be up to 20 hours a week, in which case it's double that. So there are ways to supplement that income. In terms of the travel and field work, so there are, I believe there is an initial stipend. It's not, I believe it's $1,000 or $3,000 for travel. Also, the graduate school has a separate fund that you can apply to every year for help with travel, either to conferences or field work. We are also in the process of developing or trying to get our own departmental funds to help support student activities in this regard. And that's something we're working on actively now because we know it's important. And then depending on who your advisor is, who your primary advisor is, you know, every advisor has different levels of external funds that they have. They can and equipment, and sometimes they, you know, our colleagues that are in ecology, for example, have their own labs and have their own. So there are sometimes existing infrastructure, existing funds from your advisor that you can also tap into. So it's there are some baseline ones provided by the graduate school, and then some different ones depending on who you work with as your advisor. If that helps with those things, and you know, obviously understand, and this is something that uh, is an issue across the graduate school. You know, that a base stipend of $35,000 it's a bit of a stretch to live in New York City, which is why there are these additional sources of income that you can also tap into. And we are also exploring other ways through our own departmental funds of potentially supplementing that. But for now, we can't kind of provide any more information than that on this.
There's also 2 questions about how long the PhD is expected to take to complete.
So what I can say is the funding is for 5 years, right? And beyond that, you can still get funding, but you would have to, you know, through these additional avenues of teaching and being a research assistant and you know, other forms of employment either within NYU or outside. And you can also finish it potentially earlier. But 5 years is you know, I would say the average. And we're obviously we're an interdisciplinary department, so you know, I think 5 years is roughly what, say, a natural science PhD would take, maybe less, maybe a bit more, and then in the humanities you may see it being 6 or 7. So it's really going to, there'll be a range, but I would say on average it'll be about 5 years.
There's also a question about if a master's degree is required or can it be earned on the way to the PhD? And if you have already received an MA, how would the credit transfer work?
So, okay, those are 2 different questions. So the first question is, no, you do not need a master's to apply to this program. If you have a bachelor's and are interested in applying to this program, we encourage you to do that. And you will, as noted, get a master's on the way to getting it. So once you've essentially fulfilled all your requirements in your what we call all but dissertation, where the only thing remaining is your dissertation, you will get an MPhil, a Master's of Philosophy, right? Which is its own degree. And then once you've completed and successfully defended your dissertation, that's when you will be awarded the PhD, right? And in terms of those of you applying with already a master's, typically we would not carry over credit from those masters, especially in a program like ours that is so interdisciplinary, right? In the sense that the kind of training you will get in this program, it is unlikely that you will have this kind of training in a previous master's. So we definitely encourage, if you have a master's, you know, that's great, and it's great that you've kind of gone more deeply into a specific issue area or discipline, and that you know, we obviously encourage that and encourage you to apply. But the assumption should be that essentially none of those credits that you got as part of that different master's program would apply to this PhD program, that you would essentially be starting at the same starting point as everyone else.
And is there a teaching requirement to complete the program?
There's no teaching requirement, right? So the McCracken line, the McCracken Fellowship is independent of teaching, right? So you get that base stipend and there's no requirement. There is, I believe, a ceiling on how much you can teach, but it's quite a high ceiling. I think it's like for 4 semesters or something before the McCracken runs out over 5 years, and then for 4 semesters after the end of the McCracken Fellowship, so after the 5 years. but there is no teaching requirement. So what that means is that if you are a teaching assistant, so say you are, for example, in our department, we have 2 introductory courses for our undergraduate majors that have 120 students, and we have section leaders that run smaller group discussions, right? That would be an example of being a teaching assistant being paid on top of your base stipend, right? So what you earn would not be in place of or as a requirement. You would still get the $35,000 a year, whatever it is next year or the year after. And then on top of that, you would be paid as a teaching assistant, right? And also in the summer, there are some limited opportunities for you to teach your own courses, right? So we've had, for example, section leaders in, just to give one example, a section leader last year in one of the introductory courses that I taught also taught an environmental justice summer course, right? So she developed her own curriculum and had her own students and all that kind of stuff. So that is also a possibility, but it's a bit more of a limited opportunity. But we can discuss that more, once you're here.
A couple of people asked if the IELTS scores were accepted for language proficiency.
That is not a question for me. That is going to be a question for the graduate school. There should be an email. It's like, I think it's like gsas.admissions@nyu.edu, though I would double check that. But anything to do with kind of TOEFL or IELTS scores is a question for the graduate school and not for this department.
Sorry, I'm going through the questions.
No, please. That's great. And thank you for all your questions. We really appreciate it.
There's also a few questions about whether the writing sample must be a published work, or can the writing sample be a research paper that has not been submitted to a journal?
The short answer is yes to all of it. I believe we have, I'm just going to read what is on the website, but we say essentially it should demonstrate your ability to construct a coherent argument and should be, could be, for instance, a paper for a class, a published peer-reviewed manuscript, or a popular press article, right? So we are broad in our definition of what a writing sample should be, right? So the 3 examples we give is a paper for a class, a published, or in this, could be obviously unpublished manuscript, or a popular press article. The applicant should be first author if there are multiple authors on the writing sample. And also I would recommend in general, I can at least speak for myself as a professor. I don't want to speak for my colleagues, but where there are word limits, word limit recommendations, I strongly encourage you to stick to those word limit recommendations. You will not be rewarded if we recommend 1,000 words for a personal statement or an academic statement. You will not be rewarded by writing a 2,000 word one, right? If anything, we'll be slightly annoyed, just to be completely frank, right? And just so where there are word limit recommendations, strongly encourage you to respect those word limit recommendations. I know it's sometimes tempting to go over. I've been in that boat many times myself, but do everything you can to stay within word limit recommendations, both for the academic statement, the personal history, and the writing sample.
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
So many questions. Wait, I love. If we have a design background, is there an opportunity to submit a portfolio in the application, or would that be recommended? Or would that not be recommended? And would that be recommended? Sorry.
The short answer is probably not. First, I do want to say we would be really, this is a really, we are really welcoming of a broad array of backgrounds. So having a design background, I think, would be really exciting to have in a program like this. But when it comes to the application requirements, given what we are looking for in terms of the statement of academic purpose, the personal history statement, and the writing sample, I don't know that there is really a place for a portfolio to be submitted. That being said, we'd be interested to understand and appreciate how that background informs your interest in environmental studies PhD. And so I think without perhaps showing a portfolio, you could still be clear as to how this, a diverse array of life experiences that are perhaps unique to you make you ideally suited for a program like this.
There's which I think might also be a GSAS question, but is the program STEM OPT designated?
That's also a good question that, yes, is a GSAS question. And I don't know the answer. Sorry.
There's a few questions about collaborations within the PhD. So will the 5 admitted students collaborate during the program?
You mean collaborate between each other?
Between each other, yes.
The short answer is maybe. This is a new program, and so what's really exciting is that, especially these first few cohorts, you will have a really important say in how this program evolves, right? This department has a clear vision of what environmental studies is and what we want this PhD program to be, but we want this program to work for our students, right? And so the first few classes, I mean, really every class, but especially those first few classes will really be critical in shaping this. So while we do anticipate that the cohort will be pretty diverse in every sense of the term, right? So it may well be that, we have someone that has a background in literature that's really interested in the representation of animals in literature, and we have someone that's really interested in climate migration, and someone else, that's doing something else that's completely different. So on first blush, looking at that kind of group of people, you may say how could they possibly collaborate on something together? Or it may well be actually that group of people, there's a unique chemistry in that group of people that means that they collaborate on something that's never quite been done before, right? And so, we will come to the table with ideas of how, the kind of culture of the cohort might build in terms of having a shared reading group, or informal seminars or get-togethers, and we'll also create opportunities for interactions with different faculty, right, through either happy hours or meals or whatever it might be. But we're also open and understand that this may evolve in ways that we can't really anticipate. And so what we are building into the PhD program are kind of regular reviews, both amongst the faculty, but also with you, the students, to understand what is working well, what can we improve. And if one of the things that comes out of that is we really want to have opportunities, even amongst this diverse group of students, to find ways to work together, then we would work towards creating something like that, right? So the short answer is maybe. And at this point, within the kind of guardrails that we've set up for the program, which are hopefully pretty broad, but anything is possible within that.
Do we have time for one more question?
Sure, maybe even a couple more.
Yes, okay. So in terms of the structure of the PhD, what does the first semester look like in terms of course credits, class hours, excluding take-home work? And are students expected to start their research from the start or only after qualification exams?
All right, so you will get a nice little inside look into our PhD proposal that we had to submit to New York State to get approval. But this was just to give you a sense here. Let's see if I can bring it up. Actually, you know what? This is a bit too complicated to do. I'm not going to do this. But essentially, in your first year, you would do what have I done? Anyway, in your first year, you would take the 2-semester Foundations in Environmental Studies class. You would also take the interdisciplinary environmental research design class, and probably do at least one of the 2 semesters of the research colloquium, right? So you would take 3 or 4 courses out of a possible 8, I believe, in environmental studies. And then you would also start taking your electives, specialization electives, your methods electives. And while you're doing that, you would already start to think about, obviously, your specialization. And so in that way, you are starting to think about your research, the kind of questions you might be interested in, the field you're interested in. So we do encourage you from the beginning, as you're taking the coursework, to be thinking about your research questions, and that can change over time. But because a significant portion of the courses you take will be linked to the kind of research that you're potentially interested in, we will encourage you from the beginning. And we actually, from the beginning, from the first semester, you'll be writing, I think we're calling it a PhD vision statement, where essentially you'll be writing out, okay, what is the kind of research field or the research question that I'm interested in right now? And what are the potential courses that I can take to satisfy that? And even thinking more long term, what are the kind of career paths that I can anticipate going down, right? And this will be a live document, right? So it will change over time. You will not be tied to it in any way, but it's a way to kind of encourage or even force you to really try to think in a structured way about, like, give some direction to, what is it that I want to do and how can I get there, right? So the short answer is it'll probably be, you'll be able to already start, you should already be thinking about kind of your research as you're taking your courses. But in terms of doing the actual research, it could well start, before the qualifying exams, or you could at least have some experience of doing research in terms of being a research assistant before completing all your courses. But obviously it would start in earnest after your qualifying exams and after you've defended your prospectus. And I think we are probably at time. We've gone a couple of minutes over. Margot, thank you for corralling these 63 questions that I can see in the Q&A. As I said, if you have any follow-up or questions that we didn't get to answer, please email at phd.environmental.studies@nyu.edu. There are links on the website to a mailing list where you can be kept up to date. And there is another webinar which will cover essentially all this information again, but an opportunity to potentially get a question in that wasn't answered here. And this recording will be posted on our website. So thank you all. Thank you, Margot, for fielding those questions. Thank you, everyone, for sticking around to the end. We really appreciate it, and look forward and really encourage you to apply to this program. It's a really exciting one, and just exciting to be part of something new in the heart of a great city on a really important topic. So thank you all. Take care, and hope to hear from you soon.